We've only ever seen the draft form of the agreement, so we don't know what the final version looks like. It was leaked in 2022. There's certainly language in that is a bit concerning around ship visits and the deployment of everything from police to armed police to military personnel. But it's the vagueness of the agreement, I think, that I would say is concerning. It leaves open a lot of wiggle room for the Chinese side.
Yeah. So just how much of an election issue then has it become, or could it become?
Look, it could become a very serious election issue. I mean, we saw riots in 2021 that were very clearly targeted at Chinese businesses and about the closeness of the government to not just Chinese but Asian business interests, particularly the logging and the mining industries. So yeah, there is an underlying resentment. There's also ethnic separatist issues that he was very, Sogavare, to his credit, mentioned that in his speech yesterday. That was the first thing he talked about. But yeah, it's a gamble, you know, taking a pro-China stance to an election. No one's done it before. No,
it's true. And yet he seems to be double downing on this as something of a win for the country.
Look, absolutely. And I mean, that's what he's running on. He's running on his legacy. And this is what China can do for you, is the lure of them is the promise of a future pipeline of projects. So he's saying, look at what they've done so far. They've built all these amazing things. They're going to build some, mobile phone towers that will make you able to receive phone calls for a change, which, if you've lived in Solomon Islands, is a very welcome change. So yeah, he's campaigning both on what he's done and on what he can promise for the future, and a lot of that will depend on China.
So what is your sense? I mean, you talked about the opposition that he's faced, but what is your sense about what his standing is like at the moment, and his chances of re-election?
Look, it's really hard to predict. I mean, this is the thing with Sols, as with Papua New Guinea and as with Tuvalu, as we're seeing at the moment. You can have an election, but it takes weeks for the government to form. So it's really hard to say. He'll obviously be re-elected, I think, to his seat in East Choiseul. He's held that since 1997 without any really serious challenges. So he'll be in the mix. But there's also a bunch of other players who'll be keen to have a go. And no one to this day has managed to have consecutive terms as the leader of Solomon. So he's looking to, if you like, break that record.
Yeah. And how much of an interest do you think is Canberra taking in the way this is playing out?
Oh, I imagine they're taking a very close interest in the way it's playing out. Look, as they always do. I mean, because elections can be a spark for unrest. You see that across the Pacific. Is the majority of these the riots we've seen in the Pacific have occurred either after elections or in the lead up to elections. So it's definitely a time of living dangerously for the people, particularly in Honiara, for sure.
Graeme, let's switch to still staying in the Pacific, of course, but funding for 3 Pacific islands that are quite critical to US defence and, by extrapolation, Australian defence is being held up in this dysfunction of Congress at the moment. A letter has come to light that you've seen about just how China is pushing to fill that gap. Take us through this sort of unusual scenario that's developed.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary letter. So it's been leaked. It seems it's a letter that's been written by Palau's leader, Sarangawipes Jr., to a senator, and we don't know whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. Given the source of the leak, I would guess it's a Republican senator. And in this letter, the leader of Palau more or less makes the case that, if you hold this bill up, China is at the door. They're making promises to fill every hotel room in Palau and build more if you want them. We'll build you this, we'll build you that. Please get this done. Otherwise, China's going to make encroachments in my country and elsewhere in the Northern Pacific. Yeah. So, it's an extraordinary letter.
It's extraordinary. And Palau is one of 3 countries that form this sort of extraordinary line of defence that has always been very tightly held by, I guess, US interests.
Yeah, I mean, they're part of a compact of free association, which for these three states mean the people of these islands can live, work and receive Social Security in the US. So a huge amount of their population is already resident in the United States. So for them to fully switch to China seems unlikely. But this deal is agreed on by the Republicans and the Democrats. But as you say, Congress is just so dysfunctional that they can't find the money to fund it. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and it also seems as if some we have to be honest, in the Republican Party don't even seem to understand the sort of how important this is and how critical it is.
Yeah, I mean, the games that are being played around this are quite extraordinary. I mean, this is legislation that was put forward by Donald Trump, many, many years ago. So for Republicans not to be behind the legislation put forward by their own God just seems extraordinary. But, they're just obstructionists. They can't help themselves. They even obstruct their own legislation.
Yeah, which we've seen multiple times now. Good to see you, Graeme. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bev.